I never expected to inherit anything. Not money, not property, not even some old trinket passed down through generations. My life had been a relentless struggle, a series of low-paying jobs and mounting bills. I had no safety net, no hidden wealth waiting to be uncovered. So, when the letter arrived, neatly typed and stamped with an official-looking seal, I almost threw it away, thinking it was another late notice from a bill collector. But something stopped me. My name, printed in bold letters, caught my attention. Emma Caldwell. It read, followed by an address I hadn't seen before. The return label belonged to a law office in a town I'd never visited. Confused, I opened the envelope and unfolded the crisp sheet inside. Dear Miss Caldwell, I regret to inform you that your great-uncle, Henry Caldwell, has passed away. As per his final will and testament, you have been named a beneficiary of his estate. Please visit our office at your earliest convenience to discuss the details of your inheritance. My great-uncle? I barely remembered him. There were vague recollections of an elderly man who had visited once when I was a child, a shadowy figure with a deep voice and piercing blue eyes. My parents never spoke much about him, and as I grew up, he faded from my memory. And now, apparently, he had left me something in his will. Curious, and with nothing to lose, I scraped together what little money I had and took a bus to the town where the lawyer's office was located. The place had the sterile, impersonal air of every law firm I had ever seen in movies. Mahogany desks, neatly stacked files, and a receptionist who barely glanced at me before directing me to a small conference room. Mr. Patterson, the lawyer handling my great-uncle's affairs, was a balding man with round glasses that sat too low on his nose. He greeted me with a firm handshake before gesturing toward a seat. You must be wondering why you're here, he said, adjusting his glasses. Your great-uncle was a private man. He lived alone for many years with little contact with the outside world. But he was also a man of great foresight. He reached down and lifted something onto the desk between us. An old, battered suitcase. For a moment, I just stared at it. The leather was cracked, the edges frayed, the brass locks rusted. It looked like it had been through decades of neglect. Shoved into some forgotten corner of an attic, my chest tightened with disappointment. This is my inheritance, I asked, unable to keep the disbelief out of my voice. Mr. Patterson nodded. It was his wish that you receive this. What you do with it is up to you. I didn't know what to say. I had come here half dreaming of something, anything that could lift me out of the financial hell I was in. And instead, I got an old suitcase. Still, I thanked him, took the suitcase, and left back in my tiny apartment. I set the suitcase on the kitchen table and just looked at it. What had my great-uncle been thinking? Had he left me old clothes? Some sentimental keepsakes? Whatever it was, it surely had no value beyond nostalgia. But then I noticed something odd. The locks. They were old and rusted, yes, but they also seemed tampered with, as if someone had tried to pry them open before. A prickle of unease crept up my spine. Why would someone break into an empty suitcase? Taking a deep breath, I grabbed a screwdriver and wedged it under the clasp. With a little force, it popped open. The other lock followed, and the lid creaked as I lifted it. Inside, beneath layers of faded cloth, I found something unexpected. A bundle of old letters, tied with a fraying ribbon. A stack of photographs, their edges curled with age. And then, at the very bottom, something even stranger. A hidden compartment. My pulse quickened. Carefully, I pried it open. Inside was a collection of coins, each gleaming despite their age. They were unlike anything I had ever seen, intricately designed, each one stamped with dates and symbols I didn't recognize. A small envelope lay beside them, with a single word written across it in faded ink. Emma. Hands trembling, I picked it up and pulled out the letter inside. My dear Emma, if you are reading this, then my time has passed, and fate has chosen you to inherit what remains of our family's legacy. This collection is more than just currency. It is a history, a testament to what was once ours before greed and betrayal tore us apart. I have kept this hidden, waiting for the right person to find it. And that person is you. I swallowed hard, rereading the words. My great-uncle had left me something valuable, something secret. But what did he mean by greed and betrayal? And more importantly, just how valuable were these coins? I had to find out. I didn't sleep that night. The suitcase sat open on my kitchen table, the coins glinting under the weak glow of the overhead light. Every few minutes, I found myself picking one up, turning it over between my fingers, running my thumb along the engravings. They felt heavy, real in a way that made my chest tighten with anticipation. I had no knowledge of antiques, but even I could tell these weren't ordinary coins. The symbols were foreign, the dates impossibly old. Some were gold, others silver, but all of them bore a craftsmanship that spoke of another era. I needed answers. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Not that my manager cared. I was replaceable, and we both knew it. With the suitcase locked in the trunk of my car, I drove across town to an antique dealer I had once passed by, but never had a reason to enter. The place smelled of aged paper and polished wood, a mix of history and dust. The owner, a wiry man with sharp eyes, barely glanced up from his desk as I walked in. "Looking for something?" he asked, flipping through a ledger. I hesitated before stepping closer. "Actually, I was hoping you could look at something for me." That got his attention. He set down his pen, gesturing for me to continue. I placed one of the smaller coins on the counter. "I found this in an old suitcase. I was wondering if you knew anything about it." He picked it up, adjusting the magnifying glass perched on his nose. The moment he examined it, his expression changed. His fingers tightened around the coin, his jaw setting in a way that sent a ripple of unease through me. "Where did you say you found this?" His voice was calm, but there was something beneath it. Something wary. "In a suitcase my great-uncle left me," I said carefully. "Is it worth anything?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled out a reference book, flipping through the pages with practiced speed. Then, after a long silence, he let out a slow breath and set the coin down. "This," he said, his voice almost reverent, "is part of a lost collection. These coins shouldn't even exist anymore." A chill ran through me. "What do you mean?" He met my gaze. "I mean, if you have more of these, you might be sitting on a fortune." My mouth went dry, my heart pounded against my ribs. A fortune? That word didn't belong to people like me. My entire life had been about scraping by, stretching every dollar, never having enough. And now this stranger was telling me I might be rich, but before I could even process that, he said something else, something that made my stomach twist. "Thing is," he continued, lowering his voice, "if this came from your great-uncle, someone else might be looking for it." My breath hitched. "What do you mean?" He gave me a long, considering look. "Collections like these don't just disappear. If your uncle hid this, he had a reason. And if someone else knew about it..." He trailed off, shaking his head. For the first time since opening that suitcase, I felt something other than excitement. I felt fear. Fear settled deep in my gut, coiling tight like a snake waiting to strike. The antique dealer's words lingered, heavy and unsettling. Someone else might be looking for the coins. But who? And why? I cleared my throat, forcing myself to sound steady. "How much do you think they're worth?" The man hesitated, drumming his fingers against the counter. "It depends on how many you have, but if they're all like this one, millions, maybe more." Millions. The word barely made sense in relation to my life. I had never even seen $1,000 in my bank account at one time. My rent was overdue, my fridge was nearly empty, and my car's gas gauge had been flirting with empty for 3 days. And now suddenly, I had something worth millions? It felt like a cruel joke, as if I'd stepped into someone else's story. But the dealer wasn't done. He lowered his voice, glancing toward the door as if someone might be listening. "You need to be careful." I frowned. "Why?" "These coins, they're part of something bigger. There are people, collectors, historians, and others who would do a lot to get their hands on them. And not all of them play fair." The air in the shop felt heavier. My pulse drummed in my ears. "You're saying someone might come after me?" He nodded slowly. "If word gets out, yes." I swallowed hard. The rational part of me wanted to believe he was exaggerating. But deep down, something told me he wasn't. My great-uncle hadn't just hidden these coins. He had kept them secret for a reason. I pushed the thought aside for now. "If I wanted to sell them, what would I do?" The dealer studied me, as if trying to decide whether he should answer. "Auction houses, private collectors, even museums. Those are the legal ways. But if you're thinking of cashing in quickly..." He shook his head. "Be careful. If the wrong people find out what you have, you could be in danger." Danger? That word rattled through me like a gunshot. I gathered the coin, slipping it back into my pocket. "Thanks for your time," I said, my voice tight. He didn't try to stop me, But as I turned to leave, he called out one last warning. Don't tell anyone what you have, not yet. I nodded, gripping my bag tighter, and walked out into the sunlit street. My mind raced. What had my great uncle been caught up in? And if these coins were so valuable, why had he chosen to leave them to me? I needed answers. But more than that, I needed to figure out who else might be looking for them before they found me first. The drive home felt longer than usual, every shadow stretching too far, every car behind me lingering too long in my rearview mirror. My fingers clenched the steering wheel as my thoughts spun in endless circles. My great uncle had left me more than just an inheritance. He had left me a problem, a dangerous one. Back in my tiny apartment, I locked the door behind me and set the suitcase on my kitchen table, staring at it as if it might whisper its secrets. I had to be smart about this. If the coins were truly worth millions, I couldn't afford to make a mistake. I pulled out my laptop and searched for anything related to rare gold coins, missing historical collections, and antique treasures. Page after page of results flashed across my screen: auction houses, collectors' forums, stories of famous discoveries. But then, something caught my eye: a news article, The Vanished Heirloom, The Mystery of the Sinclair Collection. I clicked on it, my heart thudding. The article described a legendary collection of rare coins, once owned by an old money family, the Sinclairs. The collection had disappeared nearly 70 years ago, under circumstances that had never been fully explained. Some believed it had been stolen, others claimed it was lost due to bad business dealings. But one thing was clear: whoever possessed those coins now had something the world had been searching for. I read on, my stomach twisting. The Sinclair family had spent decades trying to recover their lost treasure, hiring private investigators, even offering rewards. The article didn't mention my great uncle, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a coincidence. Had he stolen them, hidden them, or had he been protecting them from someone else? A cold sweat broke out along my spine. If the Sinclair family was still looking, what would they do if they found out I had them? I needed to be careful, and I needed help. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts. There was only one person I trusted enough to talk to about this: Jake. We had been friends since high school, both of us scraping by in dead-end jobs, always promising each other that one day we'd make it big. He had a way of thinking outside the box, of seeing angles I missed. If anyone could help me figure this out, it was him. I hesitated before dialing. The antique dealer's warning echoed in my head. Don't tell anyone what you have, but keeping this to myself felt impossible. The phone rang twice before Jake answered. Emma, what's up? I took a deep breath. I need to see you. It's important. There was a pause. Then, you okay? I don't know yet. Come over, he said. I'll be here. I hung up, glancing back at the suitcase one last time. The weight of it, of everything inside, felt heavier than ever. As I left my apartment, a prickling sensation crawled up my neck. Like I was being watched, I turned quickly, scanning the hallway. Empty. Shaking it off, I headed for my car. But the feeling didn't go away. The drive to Jake's place was only 15 minutes, but it felt like an hour. I checked my mirrors constantly, paranoia creeping in like a slow-moving fog. Every car behind me felt like a tail. Every pedestrian seemed to glance at me just a second too long. By the time I pulled up in front of his apartment building, my nerves were frayed. Jake lived in a rundown complex on the edge of town, the kind of place where people kept to themselves. I parked, grabbed the suitcase from the trunk, and hurried inside. Jake opened the door before I even knocked. You look like hell, he said, frowning. Thanks, I muttered, brushing past him. His place was a mess. Empty takeout boxes, a half-finished beer on the coffee table, clothes draped over the couch. It smelled like stale air and old pizza, but it felt safe. I dropped the suitcase onto his table. I need you to look at something. Jake's brows lifted. Is it illegal? I exhaled sharply. I don't know. That got his attention. He sat down, rubbing his hands together. All right, let's see it. I flipped open the suitcase, watching his reaction. His smirk faded the second he saw the coins. Holy... He picked one up, turning it over. Emma, where the hell did you get these? I told him everything. About the letter from my great uncle, the antique dealer's warning, the article about the Sinclair collection. By the time I finished, Jake was staring at me like I had grown a second head. Do you know what this means? He said, leaning in. That I might be rich? I tried to keep my voice steady, but my hands were shaking. Jake shook his head. No, it means someone is going to come looking for these. The Sinclairs aren't just old money. They're the kind of rich that don't play by the rules. If they find out you have these... He trailed off, his expression dark. A lump formed in my throat. What do I do? Jake leaned back, running a hand through his hair. You have two choices. One, you disappear. Take the coins, sell them quietly, and start a new life somewhere far away. I swallowed hard. And the other? His eyes locked onto mine. You find out why your uncle had these. Because if he went through the trouble of hiding them, there's more to this story than just money. A chill ran through me. He was right. I needed to understand what I was holding before I decided what to do next. But I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. The weight of Jake's words settled deep in my chest. Run or dig deeper. Neither option felt safe. But disappearing? That wasn't me. I had spent my whole life fighting to survive, clawing my way through every hardship. If my great-uncle had left me these coins, there had to be a reason. I took a shaky breath. I need to know the truth. Jake nodded slowly, as if he had expected that answer. Then we start with your uncle. What do you really know about him? Not much, I admitted. He was a recluse. I barely remember him from when I was a kid, and my parents never talked about him. Just that he lived far away, kept to himself. Jake tapped his fingers against the table, thinking. If he had these coins, maybe he wasn't just some loner. Maybe he was hiding from something. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I reached into the suitcase, pulling out the letter he had left me. He said our family used to be wealthy, but lost everything because of greed and betrayal. He wanted me to have this fortune because he thought I'd use it wisely. Jake frowned. That sounds like a test. Like he was waiting for the right person. I nodded. But if the Sinclairs lost this collection and my uncle had it, what does that mean? Jake exhaled. It means he either stole it or he was keeping it away from someone who shouldn't have it. He stood suddenly. We need more information. Where did your uncle live? I hesitated. Somewhere upstate. The lawyer who handled the will mentioned a house, but I didn't think much of it. Jake's eyes sharpened. A house? Is it still in your name? I bit my lip. I don't know. I was too focused on the suitcase. Jake grabbed his laptop and started typing. We need to check property records. If the house is still there, it might have more answers. I watched as he worked, the glow of the screen casting shadows across his face. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Then he paused. His expression darkened. What? I whispered. He turned the screen toward me. A listing for a property, an old estate, tucked away in the woods. But that wasn't what made my stomach drop. It was the small red notice next to it. Pending sale. Someone was trying to buy my great-uncle's house. And I had a sickening feeling that it wasn't a coincidence. A cold sweat broke out along my spine as I stared at the screen. The house had been sitting untouched for years. And now, right after my uncle's death, right after I inherited the suitcase, someone was trying to buy it. That wasn't luck. That was intent. Jake was already moving, clicking through public records, looking for anything that would tell us who was behind the sale. There's no name, he muttered, just a shell company. That's never a good sign. A lump formed in my throat. Could it be the Sinclairs? Jake exhaled through his nose. If they think the coins are still there, yeah, or if they're trying to erase whatever evidence your uncle left behind. I clenched my hands into fists. Then we need to get there first. Jake looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Emma, that's a terrible idea. Do you have a better one? I shot back. Because sitting here while someone cleans out whatever my uncle left behind isn't an option. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he closed his laptop and grabbed his keys. Fine, but we go in and out. No messing around. I nodded, trying to ignore the way my pulse pounded in my ears. We hit the road before dawn, driving north as the city lights faded behind us. The further we went, the more isolated the landscape became. Long stretches of empty roads, dense forests pressing in from both sides. I clutched the suitcase in my lap, the worn leather cool beneath my fingers. Every mile we drove, the weight of it felt heavier. By the time we reached the town near my great-uncle's house, the sky was just beginning to lighten. It was a quiet place, the kind of town where people still read newspapers at the diner and knew each other's business. We stopped at a gas station, and I stepped inside while Jake filled the tank. The cashier, an older man with deep lines around his eyes, watched me as I grabbed a bottle of water. You ain't from around here, I hesitated. Just passing through. His gaze flicked to the window, where Jake stood by the car, then back to me. If you're heading up that way, he nodded in the direction of my uncle's property. Be careful. My stomach twisted. Why? The man wiped his hands on a rag. Old Henry's place. People used to say it was cursed. Then again, he shrugged. Maybe it's just the kind of place that draws the wrong attention. I swallowed hard. Did you know him? He nodded slowly. Not well. Kept to himself. But he always seemed watchful, like he was waiting for something. The bell over the door jingled as Jake stepped in. We good? I forced a smile and paid for the water. As we left, I could feel the cashier's eyes on me the whole way out. The road to my great-uncle's house was barely a road at all, just a dirt path winding through the trees. The deeper we went, the more uneasy I felt. The air was thick, damp with the scent of moss and earth. The house itself sat at the end of the path, shrouded in mist, its windows dark and hollow. Jake cut the engine. This place is straight out of a horror movie, I exhaled slowly. Let's just get inside. The front door was locked, but the key my uncle's lawyer had given me fit perfectly. The door creaked open, revealing dust-covered floors and furniture draped in white sheets. The air smelled stale, untouched. Jake stepped in behind me, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. Where do we start? I swallowed hard. Wherever my uncle would have hidden something important. We moved carefully, searching room by room. Most of the house was just as I remembered from childhood. Old, heavy furniture, bookshelves stuffed with forgotten stories. But then, in the study, we found it. A safe. Built into the wall, hidden behind a massive wooden desk. Jake whistled low. Now we're talking, my heart pounded. Can you open it? He gave me a look. Who do you think you're talking to? As he worked on the lock, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Then, just as the safe clicked open, a sound echoed from outside. A car. Someone else was here. Jake and I froze. The distant crunch of tires on gravel sent a spike of adrenaline through my veins. Whoever was out there wasn't just passing through. This house was in the middle of nowhere. They had come for a reason. Jake shut the safe without opening it and grabbed my wrist. We have to hide, I wanted to protest, to insist we see what was inside first, but the urgency in his voice sent a wave of cold fear through me. We couldn't afford to be reckless. We moved quickly and silently, slipping into a narrow closet just off the study. The door had a slatted design, allowing us a limited view of the room beyond. My breathing was shallow, heart hammering so hard I was sure it would give us away. The car stopped. A door opened. Then another. More than one person. Boots crunched against the dirt outside. Then, the creak of the front door, swinging open. Someone had a key. A sick realization settled in my stomach. This wasn't some random break-in. Whoever they were, they had expected to be here. They had access. A voice, low and measured, echoed through the silent house. Search everything. If you find it, take it. If you find them, a pause. Deal with it. My grip on Jake's arm tightened. His eyes met mine in the dim light, and I saw the same thought flicker in his expression. We were in serious danger. Footsteps moved through the house, slow and deliberate. Furniture creaked as they searched, methodical and unhurried. They weren't worried about being caught. Jake reached into his jacket and pulled out a pocket knife. It wasn't much, but it was something. We couldn't stay here. If they searched this room, we'd be trapped. I leaned in, my lips barely moving. We have to get out, Jake nodded. Carefully, he reached for the closet door, moving so slowly it barely made a sound. The footsteps were in the next room now, close, but not close enough. Then something crashed, a shattering noise from the other side of the house, followed by a string of curses. A distraction. Jake seized the moment, pushing the door open just enough for us to slip out. We moved quickly, staying low, keeping to the shadows. The house had a back door through the kitchen. If we could reach it, we might have a chance. We crept down the hallway, past the study, past the grand staircase. The voices behind us were still murmuring, still searching. We were almost there. Then, a floorboard creaked beneath my foot. Silence. Did you hear that? My blood ran cold. a gun cocked, then footsteps. Rushing toward us, Jake grabbed my hand, yanking me forward. Run! We bolted through the kitchen, knocking over chairs, shoving through the back door just as the first gunshot shattered the silence. Wood splintered beside me. We didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The woods loomed ahead, dark and endless, and we ran straight into them, disappearing into the trees behind us. Voices shouted, They were coming. Branches lashed against my face as I ran, my breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps. The ground was uneven, covered in damp leaves and twisted roots that threatened to trip me with every step. Behind us, the voices grew louder, angry, determined. They weren't giving up. Jake pulled me forward, moving like he knew exactly where he was going. I didn't have time to question him. Didn't have time for anything except keeping up and staying alive. Then, suddenly, he yanked me sideways, off the barely visible path, dragging me behind a thick cluster of bushes. His hand clamped over my mouth just as I was about to ask why. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness. I barely breathed. The men were close now, so close I could hear their footsteps crunching the underbrush. One of them cursed. They went this way. Split up. The beam of light swept past us, illuminating the trees just a few feet away. I pressed myself against the damp earth, praying they wouldn't see us, wouldn't hear the frantic pounding of my heart. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, a voice from the distance. Over here! Tracks in the mud! The footsteps hesitated. Then, mercifully, they moved away. I waited until I could barely hear them before I let out a slow, shaky breath. Jake's hand fell away from my mouth, and he leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. We need to move. Quietly. I nodded, still trembling. We stayed low, creeping through the underbrush, deeper into the woods. Every sound felt magnified. The rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the steady drum of my own heartbeat. After what felt like an eternity, we emerged near a small clearing where an old hunting cabin sat, nearly swallowed by the forest. It was barely more than a shack, weathered and forgotten, but Jake didn't hesitate. He pulled me inside, shutting the door carefully behind us. The cabin smelled like damp wood and old dust. A single window let in the faint glow of moonlight. Jake ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard. I think we lost them, for now. I leaned against the wall, my legs threatening to give out. Who the hell were they? Jake's expression was grim. Not random thieves. They knew about the house, about the safe, and they were willing to kill for whatever was inside. A cold realization settled over me. That means they know about me too, Jake nodded. Which means we're not going back to your apartment. It's not safe. I swallowed hard. Then what do? His jaw tightened. We find out what was in that safe. Whatever your uncle left behind, those men wanted it bad enough to hunt us through the woods. We need to know why. I hugged my arms around myself, trying to steady my breathing. A few days ago, my biggest worry had been making rent. Now, I was on the run from armed men, all because of a battered old suitcase and a secret my great-uncle had taken to his grave. Whatever Henry had hidden. It was worth killing for. And that terrified me. The night stretched on, thick with silence and the weight of what had just happened. I sat on the floor of the cabin, knees pulled to my chest, while Jake paced near the window, keeping watch. My mind reeled, trying to process everything. My great-uncle's mysterious fortune, the hidden safe, and now the men who had nearly killed us for whatever was inside. Sleep was impossible. My body ached with exhaustion, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flashlight beam sweeping past us, the splintering wood from the gunshot, the sheer terror of running for my life. Jake finally stopped pacing and knelt in front of me. His voice was low, steady. We need a plan, I nodded, rubbing my temples. We don't even know what was in that safe, and now we can't go back. He exhaled sharply. We don't need to go back. I saw something before we ran. My head snapped up. What? When I shut the safe, I noticed something taped inside the door. It was fast. I didn't get a good look. But it was small, like an envelope or a folded piece of paper. Hope flickered inside me. A clue? Maybe, he hesitated. If those men are still at the house, they'll find it. If they haven't already, I felt sick. So what? We just give up? Jake shook his head. No, if Henry left a clue in the safe, There's a chance he left something else, somewhere safer. I frowned, trying to think. The suitcase? Jake raised an eyebrow. What about it? I sat up straighter. I went through it, but I was focused on the coins. I didn't check every pocket, every seam. What if there's more? He considered it for a moment, then nodded. It's worth a shot. A new problem hit me. The suitcase is at my apartment. Jake's expression darkened. We can't risk going back. Those men could be watching your place. I chewed my lip. Then we need someone who can. Jake's face tightened. That's dangerous. I don't have a choice, I said, already reaching for my phone. There was only one person I trusted enough to take this risk. Lena. I hesitated before dialing. Lena had been my best friend for years, the only person who had stood by me through everything. But dragging her into this, it felt wrong. Still, comma. I had no other options. Dot. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Emma? Her voice was groggy. Do you have any idea what time it is? Lena, I whispered, gripping the phone tightly. I need your help, and I need you to listen carefully. There was a pause. Then her tone sharpened. What's going on? I took a shaky breath and told her everything. Well, almost everything. I left out the part about gunshots and men hunting us in the woods. I didn't want to scare her. Dot. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then, Lena sighed. Jesus, Emma, you always find yourself in the weirdest situations. I let out a breathy laugh, but it was shaky. Will you do it? She hesitated for only a second. Yeah, I'll go, but you owe me an explanation when this is over. Thank you, I breathed. Be careful. I hung up and looked at Jake. Now we wait. He didn't look convinced. And if they've already been to your apartment? A chill ran through me. If they had, then this was already bigger than I could handle. I just had to hope Lena would get to the suitcase first. Emma had changed. The girl who once lived a life of fear, uncertainty, and loneliness had become someone else entirely, someone stronger, more self-assured. The terror of being hunted, of having the life she knew ripped away from her, had transformed her. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for justice, for what was right. The suitcase wasn't just a key to wealth. It was a symbol of something much larger. Dot. Her motivation had shifted. The fortune she inherited was no longer just money. It was a weapon, a tool to expose the lies that had shaped her family's history, to show the world what greed, betrayal, and silence could do to people. She had a purpose now, and she was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. Jake was still by her side, unwavering in his support, but there was something new in his eyes now. A respect for her strength, a quiet admiration. Their bond had deepened since the night they'd fled into the woods, and as they stood together in the courtroom now, it was clear. He wasn't just helping her for the sake of survival anymore. He believed in her. He was fighting with her. Dot. The villains, Mr. Patterson, the lawyer who had orchestrated the entire scheme, and the men who had hunted them down, stood across the courtroom, their faces a mask of arrogance and defiance. They had believed they were untouchable, that they could manipulate Emma, control her, use her as a pawn in their game of greed. They were wrong. Dot. In this moment, they were about to lose everything. Emma had carefully orchestrated her revenge, and it was about to unfold with the precision of a masterstroke. Months of preparation had led to this day. The evidence she had gathered, financial records, hidden letters, documents from her great-uncle, and the rare coins, was all in place. She had worked with a team of investigators, exposing the true nature of the conspiracy that Patterson and his associates had been hiding for years. The courtroom was tense as Emma watched Patterson squirm in his seat. He had been confident, even smug, as he presented his case. But the moment Emma's lawyer presented the irrefutable evidence, emails, records of bribery, money laundering, and murder, the smugness drained from his face. It was like watching a predator become prey. The lawyer who had once been untouchable, who had held power over her life, was now visibly breaking down. His connections in high places didn't matter anymore. The truth had come for him, and it would destroy him. The press was already buzzing with the scandal, and his reputation, built on years of deceit, was crumbling in front of the nation. But Emma wasn't done yet. There was one last piece of the puzzle, a recording, hidden in the lining of the suitcase, one her great-uncle had left specifically for this moment. The audio captured Patterson's voice, discussing everything from bribing officials to hiding the family fortune to the threats he'd made against Emma. As the recording played, Patterson's face went pale. He could barely breathe. his throat constricting. The room erupted in chaos as the full extent of his betrayal was exposed. It wasn't just Emma's inheritance that was at stake, it was his entire criminal empire. Jake's hand tightened around Emma's, a silent show of solidarity. She had done it. She had taken back her life. And Patterson, the man who had thought he could control her, was about to lose it all. The judge's gavel slammed down. Mr. Patterson, you are hereby charged with conspiracy, fraud, and numerous counts of obstruction of justice. You will be held accountable for your actions. As Patterson was led away in handcuffs, his face twisted in rage and humiliation, Emma finally exhaled. It was over. The following months were a whirlwind. The media buzzed with reports of Patterson's downfall, of the corrupt network he had been part of, and of Emma's unexpected rise from poverty to wealth. She hadn't just inherited money, she had inherited power, the ability to make a difference. Emma didn't run from her past, she embraced it. She used the wealth to invest in her community, in the people who had always been there for her. The businesses she helped grow flourished, and the town began to transform. Emma became a symbol, not just of survival, but of justice. She was no longer a victim, she was a force to be reckoned with. As for Jake, he stayed by her side. Their relationship had evolved. They had been through hell together, and now they were building something better, something real. But even as Emma found success and new purpose, the shadow of the past lingered. Her former life wasn't entirely behind her. Her apartment, once a symbol of her struggle, now felt foreign. And Lena, the one person who had helped her at her lowest, was gone. Emma had heard rumors of her betrayal, of her involvement in the conspiracy to steal the inheritance. But Emma didn't care to confront her. Some people, no matter how close they had once been, just weren't worth the fight. The world had changed, and so had she. She had fought for justice, and she had won. But the journey wasn't over. There was more to do. As Emma sat in her new office, looking out over the town she had helped rebuild, a message pinged on her phone, a number she didn't recognize. She hesitated before opening it. It was a picture of Lena standing outside Emma's old apartment, holding the suitcase. The text read, "You didn't think it was over, did you?" Emma stared at the screen, a cold smile forming on her lips. "No," she muttered to herself, closing the phone. "It's never over." She turned away from the window, eyes blazing with determination. She had come too far, fought too hard. There was no going back now. She stood, ready for whatever came next. Whatever challenges, whatever enemies awaited. She was prepared. Because Emma had learned something through all of this. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was the storm. And the storm was far from finished.